Hey friends. So I've been reflecting. I had an interesting image come through this morning, and I've been kind of reflecting on the last couple of days of insights, and some of which I've talked about on this post, some of which I probably haven't. But so I did a post a couple days ago after having had a really great conversation with my wife, Katie, who basically was kind of pointing out to me that I was gravitating towards a low vibrational state for really no good reason, no explicable reason. She was kind of just flagged for me. You have access to all this kind of state of real creativity, integrity, enthusiasm, and joy and playfulness and good energy that you're bringing to this process. Why would you get stuck on the level of the things that you could plausibly be upset about, but which are not even really, a lot of them are just not even real. They're figments of your imagination. Why would you go to this vibration? And that really reframed things for me in a helpful way. That I settled into a new place and was able to kind of take some steps on some projects and just able to do what needed to be done without any emotional entanglement or without a lot of complexity going on. And even once I arrived in that state, that sort of more high vibe state, I found that every once in a while I'd catch my mind rehearsing a pattern, rehearsing an argument, going over territory that I was already familiar, but that for whatever reason my mind was going over, and what showed up was a recognition that I go to those patterns, that kind of like those patterns of emotional and psychological circularity, whether I'm rehearsing an argument with someone or whether I'm justifying my behavior to myself, my justifying my feelings to myself, right? Whatever it is that's on that kind of like frustrated bandwidth, I go there almost like it's a sweet tooth for those patterns. It's like those patterns are like syrup, like a sugary syrup that is like a craving, so I would be like just taking a shower, we're cleaning the house, doing something else, doing something random, and I'd suddenly notice, wait, why is my mind doing this? What is it? And the image that showed up was this notion of sweetness, like the patterns are sweet. They taste sweet. And in a similar way, to anybody who ever eats candy, knows you take, once you start eating sugar makes you want more sugar. It's the way sugar works. And it's actually, then I started to kind of deconstruct the image, and I was like, well, this is actually really a great image, because sweetness, the physiological taste, the sense taste of sweetness is a pattern, right? And it's a pattern it's not just a psychological pattern or an emotional pattern, it's actually physiological. There's something in our human organism that has been programmed to crave sweetness because there was a time when sweet things were incredibly rare. Sugar was not something that you just found anywhere you went. And it communicated something to our system that basically said, I'm giving you a lot of energy. I'm giving you the fuel that your brain runs on. That's what sugar is. The brain runs on glucose. So getting more glucose, getting sugar is literally a biologically programmed pattern to crave something that our system desperately needs. And nowadays, it's almost an entirely detrimental pattern because we have so much sugar, we don't know what to do with it all. We have to work hard to keep sugar out of our lives. Far harder than we do to bring it into our lives. It's flashing at us from every store, every gas station, everywhere we look. Sugar is, billboards, advertisements, online, it's everywhere. And there are obviously, the reason I like this image is because it's a kind of template for craving and a template for addiction that can be applied to almost anything. The mechanism is almost always the same. But I just found this kind of a fascinating, even though kind of obvious, correlation that I would pick up thoughts and start to chew on them like they were candy. It's like my mind just wants to eat the candy of these thoughts. And they're not pleasant thoughts. And they don't have pleasant emotional effects on my system, but I still want them. And here I am chewing on my thought candy. Why? Well, that's the nature of patterns. It's just the nature of patterns. We've gotten, it's been programmed into us that they are somehow of benefit to us. They're giving us something we desperately need. On a psychological level, on an emotional level. In the case of sugar, it's on a physical level. And I think, the good news in all this is that it is actually easier to reprogram our psychological patterns and emotional patterns than it is to reprogram our physiological, biological patterns. Those patterns are deep. Like it's going to be, we can bring them under control, right? We can bring our craving for sugar under control. People do it all the time. You can have a healthy relationship to it. It just means it can't be an unconscious relationship. It's unlikely that someone who has an unconscious relationship to sugar is going to have a healthy relationship to it, because the biological programming that we still carry in our human bodies has not caught up with the day and age where sugar is no longer scarce and valuable. It's ubiquitous and more likely to do damage than good. So that's all patterns, right? It's not all patterns. Some patterns are healthy. Some patterns are in their sort of like sweet spot. They're in they have a healthy effect on our life. But a lot of them don't. And especially like the one I'm talking about, like me somehow, for whatever reason, finding it just irresistible to chew on another argument in my brain. Is this helping me? Is this evolving me? Is this helping my life? What is this contributing? How am I growing? Right? I'm just spending energy on something that could also be spent on something else. That's literally all I'm doing. It's a waste of energy. It's like having a fissure. It's like a crack in the integrity of my surrounding membrane, and there's energy leaking out that I then have to replenish because it leaked out. So tracking that, and more than anything, I was just kind of fascinated by my own response, even after being so settled and just total conviction. Like, it was really a big shift after I had this kind of profound conversation with Katie. I really did feel like my system settled into a new place, and a whole kind of different state showed up. Felt very powerful, and then I noticed I don't know, a couple hours into the day, I'm running this pattern again. Why? It's like grabbing sugar. It's like you just start, you grab one candy out of the basket, you grab another candy out of the basket, you grab another one. Before you know it, the bowl is empty, and you're like, "What? Did I eat all that candy?" That's me and my thoughts. So, yeah, and I'm sharing it obviously because I want to be conscious of it, and I think it's helpful to understand every aspect of how a pattern hooks us, and every aspect of what our kind of like gravitation towards a given pattern might be, is helpful to see and become conscious of. Because when we're conscious of it, then we can start to decide. Then we can decide yes or no. Not conscious of it, the pattern's just going to run us. That sugar bowl is just going to eat us. So that's what showed up for me over the last couple days. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I will see you very soon.